Hello and welcome to Industry Today, the podcast powered by MTC Events. Today's episode was recorded at the National Manufacturing Summit, hosted here at the MTC earlier this year. We were delighted to welcome event host Daisy McAndrew as a guest presenter for a series of exclusive interviews with key contributors and speakers from the event. Today, Daisy is speaking with Katie Petherbridge from National Gas. We hope you enjoy it.
Well, hello, everybody. My name's Daisy McAndrew. I'm delighted to welcome you to the Industry Today podcast series brought to you by MTC Events, where we'll sit down and talk to industry-leading experts, sharing their insights and thoughts about the future of the advanced manufacturing industry. Well, today's podcast taking place live from the National Manufacturing Summit here at the MTC, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by Katie Petherbridge from National Gas. Katie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Katie, I'm so thrilled that you're our first guest. Just to explain briefly, what is your role at National Gas?
Of course. So I have the nice title of Innovation Delivery Manager for National Gas. So I look after a portion of our innovation team where we are managing the full research portfolio for net zero to sort of reach our net zero goals for 2050. So looking after utilising off-gem funding and our internal funding to do research projects to enable our technical capabilities for the future.
And net zero, obviously incredibly important, but energy security, the UK's energy security, also top of a lot of people's mind. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in that area?
Yeah, I think the number one point to make is energy security is at the forefront of everyone's mind. And no matter what this transition is going to bring for us in future, that will always be number one on the agenda. So yes, we need to move to more greener fuels. We need to move to using more biomethane, hydrogen and carbon capture technologies. But it won't be a switch, sort of change the switch and it will all change in a day. And I think that's number one. Our methane colleagues will be very happy to hear that, and everyone. It's about transitioning with what makes sense, the technologies that make sense in the right places, but really understanding our capabilities. So doing innovation projects and research projects to let us understand what the art of the possible is, and then being able to then supply it and execute it effectively, utilising the skills and competencies and growing at a pace that we can meet the change in an efficient and effective manner.
And you mentioned there what makes sense, and presumably what makes sense today might not have made sense a while ago and might again not make sense in the future. So you're always going to have to be aware of that sense of being able to pivot or change your mind or change the direction.
Exactly. And I think it's how we transition from methane to hydrogen and utilise a full ecosystem view. So look at the holistic nature. We don't just do our innovation in isolation. We make sure that we collaborate with our partners in the GDN, so the gas distribution networks. And we make sure we work with our energy colleagues in electrical and national grid and our partners from all the way through our supply chain to make sure that we're focusing from universities through to small SMEs, through to our big OEMs as well, to bring everyone along the journey with us.
And let's talk a little bit more about hydrogen. Obviously, a lot of people talking about hydrogen, but what is going on in that sphere that we should all be aware of, those of us who aren't in your world?
Oh, God, yeah. I could be here for days. But really, there's more than you think. There's a huge amount happening and a huge amount of knowledge dissemination. And I come from a background of automotive. That's where I started my career. And coming into gas, I have been so amazed by the amount of cross-industry collaborations that are happening. It is really a pace of we are sharing knowledge. We are working with our colleagues to do innovation projects. So the major thing, probably one example. So Ofgem have two major funds that we can get some innovation funding for. We have NIA, which is Network Innovation Allowance. And that is a pot of money that we as the gas industry and electrical industry can pull together and do small projects based on gaining our research and innovation approach for the future. All those projects are going towards our safety case that we are building to provide to the Health and Safety Executive, to provide to DESNZ and government to make legislative change, to drive policy and standard improvements across not only our companies but the whole industry, and really drive those into our business as usual, really make decisions of how we'll manage and construct and design our future pipelines.
And going back perhaps even a step behind that, why hydrogen?
Yes, that is a question. Hydrogen is a more net zero gas. It is, you can create it from electrolysis, from splitting water, which is obviously an abundant resource for us, and it moves us away from fossil fuels. And it enables that decrease in carbon emissions that we all need for 2050.
And you've talked about some of the initiatives that are there to help you. What are the things that hinder or that you'd like to change? What are the things that make your job difficult? Is it attitude? Is it logistics? Is it skills? What are the things that you would like a helping hand with?
There's a lot of challenges. We don't pretend that there is. The biggest ones that we see are skills and competencies and the growth of that. But I say that a challenge, but it's a huge opportunity. I'm more of an optimist. And the more we can look at partnering with universities, partnering with apprenticeships, and preparing the supply chain for that change, the better. That's one thing. The biggest other thing is data. So yes, we have an old network that was started to be constructed in the 1960s, 1970s that is still running. So actually gaining data on what our system is like today and how we can transition that is critical. And how we utilize that more effectively with machine learning, AI, make faster driven decisions, use technology to make us more faster at applying operations and maintenance, and be predictive in how we manage the system, and how we work with our customers, and how we make sure our customers are centric to all of that. We are transitioning. There are new markets that are able to be grown from hydrogen, and we see the NTS as a real drive there. There is an already inbuilt structure in the ground of 5,000 miles that we can inject hydrogen at different blend percentages, get it from Wales, from Milford Haven in Wales, and get it all the way up to Scotland to places that need it, and deblend it. We can purify it to enough purification that it can drive hydrogen fuel cells in the transport industry for trains. We can use it for power generation and really decarbonise power generation in industry, which is that stat. There was a stat this morning, 43% of all carbon emissions in the UK is industry and manufacturing. If we can drive those decreases through the power sources that they have, make those power sources net zero, that's a huge combination, and the NTS is there to be used.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm fascinated what you were saying about data, and of course it made me remember that one of the advantages that a startup or a smaller organisation has is they're starting afresh, so their data systems, their technology is all up to speed. When you're dealing with a very large organisation, whether it's the NHS or a power supplier with a legacy system with huge amounts of data, but for sort of sluggish and old, that makes your job much harder, doesn't it?
It does. And I think what's really important is that data is not just data to drive AI and these really cool data models. It's actually really important for our technical understanding. So as we shift to different technical assessments and different approaches, the more data we have to make data-driven decisions on how we operate the network, the better, and the different standards that are going to be driven about how we do different assessments, and make sure that safety is our number one priority, just making sure that is in here, because that is at the factor of everything we do. The centre of everything we do is making sure that we are safe, and what is critical to that is data-driven decisions.
Yeah. Now, it'll be very obvious to our listeners that you are a female in this job, which sadly we're both well aware that is not usual or common in this industry. We've still got a real problem we talked about a real problem with skills, but particularly with females in this area. Talk a little bit about your path to where you got to.
Oh, now this is a topic I could talk about forever, because I would not be here today without intervention, without a Girls in Engineering initiative that was led by Trinity College in Dublin. I'll say I'm Irish, but I love it here. I went to an all-girls Catholic school in Ireland, where there was just about, we had to go to another school to do applied maths if you wanted to do that at 6 a.m. in the morning. So it was not a driven. Most of my friends were trying to do teaching or nursing, and I was meant to be a nurse. But in fourth year of school, 16, 15, we got the opportunity, 3 of us got the opportunity in my whole year to go into Trinity College for two weeks during summer. And we got to be introduced to what engineering was. We got introduced how to do CAD, and we made jewellery, and we then we made it in the manufacturing labs down below in the college. And I did that for 2 summers, and I was introduced to role models through that. There was one particular woman who led it, who were students who led it, and I was just really inspired. And by the end of the second summer, I was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing engineering management in Trinity College. I'm going to be doing a user-centered design with Stanford University in my 4th year, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And then I ended up running that summer school myself for 2 years, and driving through it. So if I wasn't in school that day and my teacher coming in, I wouldn't be here.
I mean, that what you described there, obviously you mentioned luck, but also so many things that we know and we've been told work, role models, exposure, and then you were an example of exactly what we're always told. If you get those women, those girls into the industry, they will then be the role models and they will take responsibility, which is exactly what you did. You went back and you gave back. So it can be a virtuous circle, but it needs to get going. And we still seem to be so slow on progress.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Like even last week, I presented to work experience students on design thinking, and another woman in my team went into a school and did a talk on it. And there is that. It's part of industry's requirements and responsibility to really drive that, and how we make those stronger connections, like create a mentorship program where every industry has to have a target to go into 10 schools a year on different topics. Like, what can we start to drive those types of initiatives? Because I'll be the first one in the door if we can.
Yes, I'm sure. Well, you've already been through that door. And what would you like to see next, both in your industry and in your personal career?
Oh, wow. To be honest, I'm loving what I'm doing right now. We have an amazing team, a really youthful, energetic, but also experienced team that are making those decisions. So all I want is for my team to get the continued support. And as we transition as an industry, gaining that momentum and continuing that with knowledge dissemination of what we know in our small little siloed team at the moment. We have been really working the last year to embrace that across the rest of the organisation, and National Gas has been incredible for that. They've really driven that. Our CEO, John Butterworth, has fully got on board with the innovation and net zero agenda, and our business goals really meet that. So that continued support is going to be in us, but now it's on the government to support us with investment. We can't do it alone, and we can't expect our OEMs, who are our initial sort of constructors, to cap that cost. We need the government to help us with early front investment and to make sure that we're getting that through and building that future that they need us to build.
Yeah, well, that message is loud and clear. Katie, it's been such a delight to talk to you. Fascinating personal career path, but also talking about what's going on with hydrogen, I think will have been really, really interesting to so many of our listeners. And talking about who is listening, we would love to know if there are any specifics that you'd like us to cover in this podcast, any areas that you think aren't being discussed enough that you would like to tip us off about, and any areas that the company or you would prefer we don't talk about. Maybe there's something that you think, boring, yawn, move on, we can do better than that. We are open to all suggestions, so do get in touch. And of course, make sure you tune in to each episode, available to download wherever you find your podcasts or at mtcevents.co.uk. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Daisy McAndrew. Goodbye.